People who have actually had S for the step relative. What was the aftermath? Story 1. We were on a family holiday in Spain and the apartment was quite small, so a few of us slept in the living room. I was almost asleep when I heard my older brother get a handy for my stepsister. I had forgotten about the sounds until now, and it has been almost 2 decades already. I don't think they had physical relations, maybe without me knowing, but I don't think there was any aftermath besides extreme awkwardness in my part for the rest of the holiday, and a significant time afterward. Now that I think about it, they were both ill for a few evenings that holiday, so now I realize that was BS and it was just them having fun. To further expand, as it may not be clear, my dad and stepmom would take us out for dinner every night, so both of them being ill meant they were in the apartment alone. P.S. I don't know if they knew I was awake, hope not, but I waited until the noise stopped, and she went to bed, and then I cried quietly in the bathroom for a bit. Story 2. The outcome was dramatic and incredibly tragic. I had a colleague once who drunkenly confessed to sleeping with her stepbrother, eventually developed into a serious relationship. Her parents found out and desperately tried to get them to break up. The colleague ended up dating her stepbrother in secret. It's an open secret in the office at this point. Awkward because the stepdad was also in upper management. Anyway, her parents found out again and tried to get them to break up a second time. It all gets rather public, ugly, and quite embarrassing for her mom and stepdad, who are now senior figures in the industry running their own company. The colleague tells us that she's been given ultimatums by her mom but doesn't describe what they are. Suddenly, she stops showing up to work and emails a resignation. She tells HR that she's moving to the US to find some peace. The colleague also texts some people at work to tell them that she's had enough of the drama and is moving away. A few weeks passed and there was no news from her until her stepbrother and boyfriend started contacting all her work friends. I was in contact with some of my teammates where the stepbrother is desperately trying to get in touch with her because she's broken up with him via text. Who wants to know if anyone's heard from her? It doesn't believe that she now lives in the US and that she'd go without telling him. Everyone writes him off as a guy who couldn't handle the rejection until he goes to the police and files a missing persons case. The police actually made a few inquiries, much to everyone's surprise. It doesn't happen often because they usually don't give a damn. This is still a developing country after all. In the end, the police write the stepbrother off as a lovesick loon, and everything settles down. For a while at least. Stepbrother has gone crazy, claiming that he thinks something bad happened to her. He says he's fallen out with his parents over it. No one at work wants to get involved in this family drama, especially since the parents are important people. Things died down again until they didn't. Fast forward 2 years and no one's heard from her colleague until the cops came calling. They have arrested her mom's chauffeur on an unrelated charge, and he confesses to ending her colleague. He even leads them to the evidence. It doesn't, however, reveal a motive. It must have been stalking her, and he thought he got away with it until the police decided to investigate further. Her colleague never went to the US. It turns out the emails she sent weren't from her either. They were sent after she passed away. The texts, the emails, and the breakup were all from her mom. She covered her tracks after she orchestrated the slaying of her own daughter because she wouldn't stop dating her stepbrother and was going to marry him. Story 3. My uncle married his stepsister when they were teenagers. They had 4 kids together and eventually got divorced. Years later, my dad married her. She was his stepsister and his younger brother's ex-wife. My cousins became my stepsiblings. My uncle lives around the corner. Her kids did not like being told what to do by their uncle. My dad always felt like she treated me and my sisters poorly. My grandma threatened to disown my dad several times for marrying her. They were together for about a year before stepmom couldn't handle dad's drinking anymore. He said he was sick of her kids and they were not treating my sister and me well enough. We moved up, but they stayed married for over 10 years. My cousins and step-siblings weren't as close with us after that, and my sister and I were kind of considered the black sheep of the family. Too bad. I liked being around my cousins so much and I thought my aunt and stepmom was cool. I was young at the time though. I can't imagine what those two were thinking when they got together in the first place. The whole thing was confusing to say the least. Story 4-D. Our parents got remarried later in life when they were already grown adults. We were both only children, so having siblings was a new experience for us, but we wanted it to work, if only for the first time. Tap, tap, beat. There was only one way to go from there. We went out that night intending to become closer. Mission accomplished. We smashed a few times a week for 5 to 6 months before we both met other people. At that time, we became very close, telling each other our fears and secrets, and generally being what you think of as brothers and sisters, except for that other thing. Friends have remarked about how close we are, especially for how short a time it's been. You would think that would be the end of the story, but instead of going our separate ways with the new people in our lives, we ended up realizing we had fallen hard for each other. Now we're dating and trying to figure out how to tell our parents, family, friends. I might not have that problem for too much longer though. The last time her dad came into the living room where we were hanging out, well, first he knocked. Whoa. This dude and his sister found a shortcut to becoming very close in such a short time. Story 5. Obligatory, not me. The mother used to work with a woman who married her daughter's fiancé's father. Let me elaborate a bit on that so it really sinks in. A woman my mother worked with had a daughter who was engaged to someone. This woman was planning the wedding with someone's father in a Protestant or something church, and while planning began dating the father. So the father and mother are dating while the kids are planning to marry, and they decide to get married before their kids. So they went and got married at a weekend's war in Vegas. They came back and continued to plan their children's wedding. Their children are now legally brothers and sisters. They went down exactly as you'd expect. The church found out and refused to perform the ceremony. They go to a GoP who refuses on the same grounds. They ended up having to get married out of state because the dumb parents couldn't just get the third or fourth or whatever marriages performed before the children are happily married. Surprise twist, kids get married and have kids. The husband checks the baby until she passes away and gets 20 years in prison. The mother is suitably horrified and the father backs up his son, so they divorce. So in the end, absolute narcissists. Story 6. Me. My dad remarried when I was in my teens, and my stepmother's daughter moved in shortly thereafter. She was the same age as I was. We weren't super friendly, but as a hormonal teenager she was the object of many fantasies. We did not do much, but I did give her back rubs a couple of times. She never let it go further until I came home to visit after moving out. We were hanging out one night at home. My dad and her mom are asleep, and she basically decided she wanted to have some frisky fun. So we did. It was far from her first time, but it was mine. We hooked up again a few months later when she came to visit me, but then she ran off with the guy who ended up being her first baby daddy. Aftermath, nothing happened again after that. And I'm in my first serious girlfriend who knew how I lost my V-card. My stepsister started acting jealous. That was awkward, but it was easier to deal with once my stepsister and her mom fell out and stopped talking. To the best of my knowledge, my dad and her mother never found out what their kids had gotten up to. By the way, the rumors that my stepsister was in adult film videos are completely false. I mean, I've seen the videos, but those rumors are still false. Story 7. I met a really hot guy about 2 years older than me at a bar one night. We hit it off, and flirted the whole night. About a week later, we bumped into each other again and exchanged numbers. We ended up being a couple. A few weeks went by and things were looking good. We slept together a few times and everyone was happy. One night, I went out with my dad and his soon-to-be fiancée. My dad has come to me for advice and a ring. They'd only been dating for about 6 months. I loved this lady and called her mom. I found out that if they married I would have a stepsister and stepbrother added to my family. We were already 6 siblings. While we were out, this woman totally freaked out and almost carried me to the bar in excitement. I thought she had too much to drink and wanted to do shots or something. We get into the bar and she says she wants me to meet her son. She taps this dude in the shoulder, and when he turns around it's my freaking boyfriend. Best of all, she introduced us by saying, "Meet your new brother to me and meet your new sister to him." We just stood there staring at each other, burst out laughing and carried on drinking on our own. We still did it a few times after the families moved in, but ended it so our parents could have a shot. Our reasoning was that our parents were quite old and might not find someone else, and we were young, and had our whole lives ahead of us. Anyway, he fell in love with my then best friend, and I fell in love with someone else too. Our parents broke up because this woman turned out to be a Karen level 1000. We have never seen her spoken to each other since. I'm not sure if our parents knew, but I'm pretty sure my dad had an idea but never said anything. Oh man, too bad Karen came between this couple. If you dig these kinds of threads like this video and watch till the end while you're at it, why don't you subscribe to my channel? I upload cool threads like this one daily. Story 8. My husband's brother secretly dated their stepsister. Only my husband knew about it. Despite him telling his brother that it was a bad idea, he still pursued their relationship. They had to confess to the family because she unexpectedly got pregnant. Their mom was upset and disappointed, but said she'd support their decision to be in a relationship and start their own family. The father, however, could not get on board and pressured his daughter to do something about the baby and to end the relationship. They still ended up together and had the baby. A few years later they both cheated on each other and ended the relationship. Family gatherings are super awkward with my husband's side of the family. Story 9. A while ago I was at my cousin's wedding. Not at the wedding party, but as a guest. My direct genetic extended family is tiny, as none of us have done much breeding. My adopted cousin was seeing a guy in the military who was deployed. I've had a crush on her for like ever, but she has never seemed to return it. After the festivities, everyone is at a rented lake house and drinking. She's out of her bridesmaid's dress and wearing something fit for clubbing. She's been lamenting her loneliness since the prior day's rehearsal. I've been keeping her company to be nice. Nothing weird. Then after a beer she says how buzzed she is and takes me by the hand to the boathouse. She takes out her chest and says she just needs a man right now. I get her drift. I asked about her guy. She says not to worry and just have fun. So here I am with a pretty girl with her chest out who I've crushed on forever, and she's invited me into my one chance to smash her. I refused. I told her I wouldn't play Jody to her fiancé. She got really mad and stormed off. I refused, but holy hell, I so wanted to smash her. Second story. Same wedding. Uncle has a wife he married overseas. She's an Asian islander and has several sisters, all of whom are also there. I headed out for the younger sister. Early 30s, petite, Asian-looking, generous behind her frame. At the after-party we were getting hammered. She stumbles and asks me to be a nice young man and help her. We end up smashing into someone's bedroom, not even bothering to get properly undressed. Unprotected. Stupid, I know, but it was hot. We smashed again when there was a family gathering 9 months later. We exchanged naughty texts and have resolved that it was just for fun, though I would not be opposed to openly romancing her. I see her a few times a year and we have fun. Nobody else knows, and I imagine the secret getting out would make it end in tears. I would recommend it though. Story 10. I had a relationship with my stepbrother in high school. He moved in with us when we were young. A few months after he moved in, he started flirting with me big time. We went out one night to get out of the house with my mom's car, and things just sort of happened. We started hooking up at every opportunity. I was pretty sure my stepdad knew what was going on, but he never said anything to either of us. A few of our friends knew and were pretty weirded out by it, but I think they eventually got used to it. We had a super physical and emotional relationship for like 6 months. Then one day, he brought a girl home, and it was just over. I was devastated. It was so awful to have no choice but to see them together when I was home and couldn't escape. I think that made the breakup so much harder. He graduated, moved out, and broke up with his new girlfriend. I went a little wild, men-wise, which helped me finally move on. We hooked up a few more times when I was in college, but at that point, I knew that nothing would ever come out of it than good fun. A few years back at a family gathering, we had to run out to get more ice, and while we were out, he propositioned me. I turned him down since I was dating my now husband and a no cheater. But there was honestly a part of me that was tempted. Besides the bad breakup, there were really no long-term consequences. I never got caught, which looking back is super surprising. We used to have fun all the time, all over the place, since we had access to each other pretty much 24/7. I don't regret any of it, but I definitely do not go around and tell people about it. Story 11. My mother passed away, so my brother and I moved in with my father, stepmother, and stepsister. My parents had a brutal divorce, so we were not very close to them. In fact, we didn't see my father for years. Fast forward, my brother, stepsister, stepbrother, and I would play lights out as teenagers. Basically, I turned the lights out and started hitting each other with pillows or anything we can find. I know, it sounds like a sick game. Later, when we all played and wondered why I was not getting my hair pulled or punched, I turned on the lights and found my brother and stepsister making out. We stopped playing lights out, but my brother and sister were secretly seeing each other until my stepmother found out. I wonder what other things they found and used to hit each other. Imagine finding a chair and using that. Story 12. Back when I was young, my mom just started to date this new guy who had a daughter from another marriage. We got along really well, and even from the start, there was a lot of flirting, but we would never do it in front of our parents. One day on her dad's birthday, we were sitting on a hillside next to our house, a bit tipsy from some of the booze that we managed to sneak out. I was lying on my back when she moved over and began kissing my face. We had physical relations later that evening. I remember a lot of the winter that year was just us waiting for our parents to leave for date night, so we could just go at it. It was one of the happiest times of my life. Until the wedding. The wedding itself, I believe, is the reason all this ended. Both the families seemed to be over the top with talking about how great a brother and sister we are, and combining this with the marriage itself made it feel more real this time, and unnatural. She was always incredibly anxious about what would happen to her if her dad found out in one night. A couple of days after the wedding, she told me that we should stop. I can only remember feeling numb. The difficulty of putting on a fake smile when trying to play happy family and act like nothing happened. I'm 29 now, and have not been able to enjoy physical relations as much as I did then, which has affected my relationships to date. I cannot replicate the forbidden intimacy, and I don't know how to solve it. Story 13. Not me, but my coworker got his nephew a job with their company to help strain him out and let him live with him. A few months later, he starts talking about how he is going to be a granddad because his 18-year-old daughter who lives at home is pregnant. We later found out his nephew was smashing his daughter on the regular and was the father of his grandchild. Nephew got fired for failing a medical test, not even 6 months into the gig. I'm pretty sure he ended up getting kicked out of their house too shortly thereafter. Story 14. So I had 2 friends, and they fell in love after meeting on a drunken one-nighter. They dated for about 2 years and decided to get married. The girl's family was from Australia, so although they'd met each other's parents, the parents had met before the wedding. So it gets to the actual wedding day. The Australian family has flown in, the English family is there, everyone has sat down, and the wedding proceeds. Straight to the after-party. Unbeknownst to my friends, both sets of parents were in the process of getting divorced. As everyone was having a meal, none of the parents were anywhere to be seen. Some of the groomsmen and bridesmaids went hunting for them as their reception was taking place in a huge country villa. 2 bridesmaids found the bride's mom and the groom's dad having some fun in a toilet upstairs. At nearly the exact same time, another groomsman found the bride's dad and the groom's mom, baked and having fun as well in the makeup and hair room. All the bridesmaids and groomsmen kept it secret until after the wedding, when we found out the others had been cheating as well. We'll lose our collective minds at how funny it is, and tell the bride and groom. They are mortified. They just thought they had been smoking grass, as the smell was undeniable. They didn't realize their parents had gone full partner swap. Anyway, a year later, both parents have separated and are trying to remarry their opposite numbers, which will make my 2 friends depositing twice over. There are 4 parents trying to convince my 2 friends to divorce so they can get married, and 1 couple is saying they're not going to get married anyway, whether the kids get divorced or not. Story 15. My grandmother is one of the 14 kids. They were sort of like a giant Brady Bunch. Before she was born, her dad's wife passed away, and her mom's husband died. They met, got married, and had 3 kids in addition to the ones they already had. Her half-brother from her dad and her half-sister from her mom had the tendency to sneak off to the barn together. To be clear, they were my grandma's half-siblings but weren't related themselves. They were teenagers when their parents married, so I guess it was an open game. They both disappeared one day, came home a week later and announced they had gotten married. I can only assume it was an awkward family conversation. They had 5 children over the years. My grandma's mom was a bit ashamed of the situation for whatever reason. I guess it was somewhat scandalous who made people in the community talk. My grandma always had to hang up about boys and girls playing together after a certain age. I didn't realize why until I put it all together later in life. I guess when your brother and sister run off and get married, you become overly suspicious of family members playing in the barn.